These two Kansas moms that we're going to be talking about are Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelly. Her loved ones say that Veronica's biggest passion in life was being a mother to her two kids. Although her kids' father, Wrangler, definitely has a different story when it comes to how she was as a mother. The two of them were never married, and their relationship was very toxic, very on and off again. And when the two of them eventually did split up for good, at first they seemed to have a custody agreement that worked for everyone, that everyone was okay with as far as I understand. However, later that summer, Veronica made the decision to move to Colorado with the kids. And she did this without the court's approval, which is a big no. And she also didn't even give notice to Wrangler. And according to Wrangler, the kids always returned to his care hungry, bedwetting, and not wanting to return back to the custody of their mom. And of course, that is coming from him. So in June of 2020, he asked the courts to be granted primary physical custody, citing what Veronica had allegedly been doing to them. And in a trial in early 2021, Wrangler presented multiple witnesses who could testify to Veronica being an unstable and reckless parent. Wrangler ended up being granted full custody, and Veronica could only see the kids once a week on Saturdays in supervised visits. In early 2024, right before the murders, he had been ordered to complete a 6-month inpatient rehab, which obviously meant that he wasn't looking after the kids. So who was? Well, that would be their grandmother, Wrangler's mother, Tiffany Adams. Now, let me just tell you that this woman is truly evil. Veronica was truly terrified of her, and Tiffany definitely made it as hard as she could for Veronica to visit with her children, which is just one of the reasons that Veronica was petitioning the courts for increased visitation. And the thing is, she was close to getting that increase in visitation around the time that she was murdered. But like I already explained, at this point in time when Veronica was murdered, she was only granted those once-a-week supervised visits on Saturdays. Now, who was the supervisor for these visits? That brings us to our next victim, Jillian Kelly. Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelly were abducted and killed in broad daylight. March 30th, 2024, which was supposed to be like any other normal Saturday. Veronica was supposed to see the kids that day, pick them up for her scheduled supervised visitation, and she was planning to take them to a family birthday party that day. Now, I want to be super clear here. Jillian was not the usual supervisor for these visits. She was just doing it on this particular Saturday. The person who usually supervised these visits is a woman named Cheryl Brune. Anyways, though, Veronica picked up Jillian and they headed to their pickup spot. Specifically, they were going to an abandoned gas station in a place called Four Corners, which was about a 45-minute drive away. Now, the plan was to pick up the kids at 10 a.m. and then head to this family birthday party. However, they never showed up, and members of Veronica's family knew that something was wrong right away. So they jumped right into action to look for her, and only a few hours later, they located her car just west of Highway 95 and County Road L. The car had not made it to their final destination, but instead was abandoned on a dirt road just a few miles away. And knowing what we know now, I can't imagine how horrified her family was when they found this car. At 12:09 p.m., they called local law enforcement to report Veronica and Jillian missing, as well as the fact that they'd found Veronica's car. And from that point forward, an all-hands-on-deck investigation began. Now, when the police arrived at the location of the abandoned car, it was immediately clear that they would need the help of the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation. There was absolutely no denying that very serious injuries occurred there. And of course, the OSBI had the resources to process and investigate what appeared to be the scene of a double homicide. And I'm sure we all have our true crime brains on right now, and you could probably guess what investigators turned to when trying to figure out what happened here. The custody battle. So I'm sure it'll shock none of you to hear that the first person they turned to was Tiffany. After all, Tiffany was supposed to be meeting up with Veronica and Jillian that morning, but according to her story, they actually weren't planning to meet. According to Tiffany, she said that she called Veronica at 9 a.m. to confirm the drop-off, but Veronica ended up canceling last minute. And just quickly, that statement couldn't be true for two reasons. One, We know from cell records that Veronica was actually on the way to pick up Jillian when Tiffany called her. So if she did cancel, why would she then go and pick up Jillian anyway? And second of all, the spot where the car was found abandoned was only a few miles away from the pickup location. And then there's this. Investigators ended up finding out that the real reason Cheryl wasn't there that day is because Tiffany had called her up and told her she should take a few weeks off. And believe me, the evidence and suspicious behavior doesn't stop there, not even close. On April 13th, 2024, it was announced that 4 people, that's right, 4 people were arrested in connection with the disappearance and murders of Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelly. And these 4 people are, of course, 54-year-old Tiffany Adams, 43-year-old Tad Cullum, who had a rifle, ammunition, and a go bag on him, 50-year-old Cole Twombly, and 44-year-old Cora Twombly. All 4 of them were charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of kidnapping, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder. And even though they didn't announce the discovery of any bodies right then, this announcement unfortunately confirmed the absolute worst case scenario, which is that investigators did not believe the women were alive. And this ended up being confirmed just a day later, on the 14th, when it was announced that 2 bodies had been found. And this discovery came after 2 days of searching and excavating a property in Texas County, Oklahoma, following the execution of a search warrant. And this is really disturbing and breaks my heart to say, but the 2 bodies were found buried 10 feet deep in a cow pasture inside of a chest freezer. But what we still don't know at this point in time is how they were killed. However, there is still a lot of other information and evidence that has been shared, so let's go over that now. First of all, on April 15th, the arrest affidavit was made public, and almost everything you need to know about this case can be found in these documents. And for starters, it outlined the custody battle, which, as I have already mentioned, investigators believe was the motive for these murders. According to the affidavit, Tiffany and the others attempted to murder Veronica back in February, but the attempt failed because Veronica refused to leave her house. And believe it or not, this information actually came directly from a witness. It turns out that Cora and Cole Twombly, which I know we haven't talked about much yet, were freely talking about what they were planning to do in front of their 16-year-old daughter. What is the common denominator here? How are these people connected? Well, according to their daughter, who is referred to as CW in the affidavit, the 4 suspects are part of an anti-government, religiously affiliated group called God's Misfits. And from what's being reported, these 4 essentially believed that they do not have to abide by U.S. law. And some of them, I guess, have renounced their citizenship, which apparently is a thing that people do. I didn't know about that. The founder of the God's Misfits did an interview with the News Nation. His name is Squirrel. Yeah. But anyway, Squirrel came out and stated that they don't even have a chapter of the God's Misfits in the Oklahoma Panhandle. And Homeboy Squirrel says he doesn't even know these people, hadn't heard of these people. And what they believed is not what God's Misfits is even about. By far, one of the most incriminating things that CW told investigators was that the night before the victims disappeared, her parents told her they wouldn't see her when she woke up because they were going on a, quote, mission. And I think the fact that they use the term mission really says a lot about the mindset of these people. But then, according to CW, when they got home, they asked her, their 16-year-old daughter, to clean out their truck. And that's not all. According to CW, they also told her that things, quote, didn't go as planned, but that they wouldn't have to worry about Veronica anymore. Oh, and listen to this. Cora straight up told her daughter that she and Cole blocked off the road that the victims were driving on in order to divert them down a different road. And that road was where Veronica's car was found. So she literally admitted to creating the diversion that ultimately led to the ambush and murders. She also told her daughter that Jillian had to die too because she, quote, supported Veronica. And when I first heard that detail, God, I've got to tell you, I was sick to my stomach. Lastly, and this is also very important, She confirmed to investigators that her parents and the rest of the members of the group were using burner phones to communicate. Which brings me to the next chunk of evidence, the burner phones, which the burner phones ended up being highly incriminating, which is ironic considering burner phones are normally used to cover your tracks. Not so much for these four. It turns out that the OSBI investigators traced the purchase of 3 prepaid burner phones back to Tiffany, who bought them on February 13th at a Walmart in Oklahoma. She also bought 5 stun guns on March 23rd, which, as we know, corresponds to 2 of the searches she made on her phone. And as you could probably guess, investigators also got search warrants for the information related to these phones, and boy, was it damning. Not only did the data further prove that the suspects were the ones using them, but it also led investigators right to where the victims were buried. Regardless, though, there's still plenty of other evidence that point at these 4 suspects. And mind you, Tiffany ended up admitting to her role in all of this. Despite her admission, she and the other 4 suspects pled not guilty. On April 17th, the judge entered a not guilty plea for all 4 suspects, and all 4 were denied bond. The family members of the victims were present at this hearing, and as you can imagine, emotions and tensions were high. Then let's talk about the 5th suspect that I mentioned earlier, who was arrested on April 24th. 31-year-old Paul Grice was arrested in connection to the kidnapping and murders of Veronica and Jillian, and he was also charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of kidnapping, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder. And for some reason, even though he was questioned when the others were questioned, investigators ended up releasing him. But this dump ended up talking to someone after that and asked, how long does DNA stay on clothes in the dirt? Not only that, he also asked how to get someone to Mexico. So at that point, the police, once this witness came forward and told them all of this, were like, okay, dude, we got you too. And according to his arrest affidavit, he also admitted to being part of it. The planning, the killing, the burying, all of it. Obviously, not a single one of them deserves a lighter sentence, but I definitely wonder if someone will end up pleading guilty for some kind of deal.